Now we will start with Indian Express first. I wanted to discuss this particular article. I have shared it recently also. I mean, in the Telegram group as well. Now she's an IAS officer. As all of you know, she's a assistant collector. So she recently joined the service. Now, what is the most important thing that is there in this particular article is the connection that people had, the approach that people had towards her. If you see this particular statement, where one old kaka means mama or chacha, some in some understanding, right? He asked her, after injection, are you going to care for me? So she brings out that particular distinction. The entire thing is not about administrative exercise alone. It's the perception in the people, the public trust. As I always repeated in my ethics classes, public trust, right? The thing is public trust. That means once they feel, yes, this person is actually going to make a difference. Day before yesterday, I think there was an article in print where you find a district collector beating a journalist. Okay, why? That collector is allegedly supporting kidnap of the members. So Panchayati elections are going in Uttar Pradesh. He was supporting the system. He was working for the system in kidnapping people. So this is Uttar Pradesh, this is India. So that is one side of the coin. On the other side is we have very compassionate officers who are able to connect with the common people. And this is especially very interesting because it's a tribal hamlet. And we have seen people locking away and running away from homes, right? So people are locking and running away because they will be forced to vaccinate. From there, people are asking the officials to come and vaccinate. That's a huge change. And as we have discussed it multiple times, it is always the local solutions that work. So here what she have done fantastically is she understood the culture. That is, the language plays a very important role. So communicating them to in the language that they understand is very important, and it works. So when we make policies either in Hindi or English, and apart from this, translating it into thousands of dialects using taking the help of the local populace will reach to the last man in the line. It's a very important lesson, and it's a very important way forward. You can use it in your GS answers. Okay, so the mainstream is fine, the mainstream policy making is fine, but for it to reach to the last man in the line, the most important thing is the local communication. And it's not cost it's very not costly, it's very cheap, because all you have to do is find someone of the local area who is very interested in this particular policy or supporting the administration, and it will work. Okay, next. So all the small changes as a policymaker has been discussed in this particular article. Though it's self-explanatory, I wanted to discuss the humane aspect of this entire camp. And remember, she is not alone. She haven't done these all things alone, right? She motivated her entire staff to be understanding. So that is a leadership trait, right? A leader motivates her own cadre and motivates the population or the citizenry, and working in tandem with them. It's a victory of both, right? It's a win-win scenario. Now, where else can we use the similar strategies? We can use the similar strategies in population control. We can use the similar strategies in general vaccination. When we talk about COVID vaccination, that's not the only thing, right? Under Indradhanush scheme, we have 12 more vaccinations. So we are making sure that each and every person is getting that vaccination. Spacing between the children can be encouraged. Malnourishment, stunting, superstitions, these can be fought using the similar techniques. So all it takes is willful government and administrator to reach the last man in the line. So 75 years after independence, if we can do that, there are still many more problems that can be solved through this particular thing. Now, coming to her answer writing skills, obviously she cleared UPSC, means she had good answer writing skills, right? So how nicely she brings out the core discussions, right? First of all, having knowledge or information is useless unless your information gets translated into action. Behavioral change is one word we all know. Okay, how do you motivate people? Behavioral change, but how? So that's the most important thing. Okay, so again, just remember it. It's nice to use such articles in ethics case studies, GS paper 2, essay writing, and hopefully we will see some of you, your photo here saying she or he has done something like this, and we will be very happy to discuss that article as well. Yes. Okay. Now, there are two articles in today's newspaper, both about population control in Assam and Uttar Pradesh. Okay. The first and most important thing we need to understand is all the things that are done by Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, or other governments have the blessings of Supreme Court, and they are following the Cairo consensus, and they are not totally draconian. They are not outrightly saying we will target only minority communities, or they are not saying we will only fine, unlike the CAA bill, it's not totally attacking one particular community, and the TFR rates are about 2.6. We need to reduce it to 2.1. That is totally understandable. So making nothing out of something is also not good for UPSC preparation or for the country. Next, coercive tactics don't work. We all know that, and when they backfire, the system won't have any other alternative but to go with the again the behavioral changes and all these concepts. Now, that is what Mr. S.V. Qureshi also nicely points out, right? They are not totally draconian. We need not worry about it, and we should not make it communal. Not everything in this country is communal, and not everybody should fall into that particular trap. By blaming everything that the governments do is also not a good attitude for the society. Yes, there are some caveats. Again, you cannot go to Supreme Court saying, you cannot bar people from contesting the elections. And unfortunately, it's the Supreme Court itself has given the blessings. So it might take a decade or so, or 5 years for this entire drama to roll out. Okay. Now, as we have discussed yesterday, if you are so worried about it, focus on ASHA workers. So that's the most effective way to bring changes. Now, and one more problem is this is not only about a particular community or a particular state, right? Wherever there is poverty throughout India, wherever there is poverty, wherever there is illiteracy, wherever there is backwardness, you automatically find TFR rates being high, right? So what we can do is we can have this clarity, like if India's TFR rates are like this, within districts, within states, you can identify them. And one more thing we need to remember is, right, TFR levels are falling everywhere, but the outcomes, the unfortunate outcomes should never be forgotten. That is, forced sterilizations did not work. At the same time, two-child norms have a side effect, that is increased abortions or female foeticide. And there is one more article about the governor of Kerala fasting, encouraging women to get educated and not to take dowry, or not to give dowry or accept a relation or an alliance with which demands dowry. So we have seen education is not equal to empowerment. In the same way, laws are not equal to empowerment. Even we might educate all the women also, still her bodily autonomy, that means her decision to have kid or not is not hers, right? It's mostly mother-in-law or the husband or her parents also sometimes coerce people into having more kids. So the male preference is also something that has to be targeted. If we put this norm, the side effect is these things. Just remember, again, for criticizing, for the sake of criticizing, you can take 2 points, that is increased female feticide, yes, and skewed child sex ratio. These two things are important. Now, yes, any questions?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Vallabh.
Sir, like as you mentioned about the abortion part, when you go for a two-child policy, sir, how can we find a solution? Like when we have a medical termination act, that amendment, like it tells the everything, like abortion is an illegal point in that way, and these two I felt come somewhere conflicting, sir.
So
Medical termination.
the same PCPNDT Act, okay, also have seen fall in the female sex ratio, right? Child sex ratio, female sex ratio has fallen. So by going by that same argument, when we have a law, we are not supposed to see a fall in the child sex ratio. We have seen that. So then how did all these abortions or feticides have happened? Just because there is an act, that does not change the people's mindset, right? The most obvious point here, it's not about the technology, it's the idea behind the technology. So that is exactly what she argues, right? You will be surprised to discover how human brain clings to a particular set of ideas. I will solve 100 mocks and I will clear brims. How many of you have deeply ingrained that particular idea? Yes. So you cling to that particular idea. In the same way, the idea behind here is I need a male child. Okay. If not for this particular act, after the girl is born, I will kill her, or I will not take care of her and I will still go for something. I will divorce the wife and I will go for a second wife to get a male child. See, here the idea is male child. If I don't do abortion, or if I don't go for feticide, infanticide, I will go for a second wife. Okay. So women have zero respect in this particular scenario. X is the husband, right? So then she will be thrown out without mercy. I will go for another. The core ideology that is driving me is male child. If I have the blessings of my parents, the society, and I'm a patriarchal male, that is more than enough for me to drive. So all the laws in the world are not going to stop me from going forward in that particular direction. So if we have to target something, we have to target this. Okay, we are targeting that, right? We are Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. Okay, Dhanalakshmi scheme. So all these schemes are to encourage what? To show the world that girl child is not a burden. She is actually an asset. Yes, and when she is empowered, she can take care of herself and her family. This entire dirty business of dowry or burden, seeing the girl child as a burden, should stop. So that is one discussion. The outcomes are spillover effects are this, right? He's not directly saying because of this. One of the aspects, this is one of the aspects. With or without the population policies, also still these things have happened. Foeticide have happened, infanticide have happened, divorce have been given. All these things existed even before the population policies. Okay, these are just accelerating that. Are 2 to 5% cases might increase because of these particular things. Existing things are already there. Society is already patriarchal. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Like I just thought of linking with the Medical Termination Pregnancy Act.
That's the PCPNDT Act, right? See, again, PCPNDT Act is a toothless tiger. It didn't actually work in the way it is supposed to. It worked in the opposite direction. Okay. Yes. So we go to Hindu. There are some really interesting articles. Just to make the class interesting, I will show a line today. I really smiled at that particular line. So Narendra Modi and Mr. Pinari Vijayan, both of them senior leaders, right? 70 plus fellows, both of them are talking together. So Prime Minister Modi was saying, so now that elections are over, we will focus about development. Okay. So, so Mr. Modi responded by saying, even while doing politics, okay, I have development in my mind. Okay. So development is never taken off the agenda. So if somebody cites, while we have elections, we don't have development in the mind, which is actually true at the grassroots level, but you can say that is not totally true. The spirit of development is always there in the mind of the political leaders. Okay, now so all superficial articles, long-term weightage is very, very less. So just go with the flow. This topic has been covered, why we need to have accurate death rates. So I won't be spending time there. This is something similar to yesterday's article in Indian Express, which suggests that the executive should be responsible to a certain level. Now, the most important thing we need to understand here is police forces are not perfect. They are also human beings. There can be a mistake of commission or omission. Okay, malified or bona fide. We cannot claim everything has been done with a malified intention. Sometimes bona fide mistakes will also happen. But the thing is, when such judicial interventions come into the picture, it will put pressure not on the police officers who are doing duty at the grassroots level, but the politician and the higher officers. Let's say SP, MLA, MP, or the particular state governments. These things these people will be coming under the scrutiny. If you find out one station SHO or CISI, okay, and blame all the mistake on him, it might be a bona fide mistake. When a riot is going on, when thousands of people are gathered, it's very hard to sometimes do a mistake. I'm just taking an example, not in this particular case. In this particular case, it appears 100% malified because there is an explanatory article in the page number 2, but let's not go into that particular thing. What happens when judiciary starts fining executive for for not doing their duty in a proper fashion, and for fake arrests or arrests with malintentions? So it will bring some kind of pressure on the executive, because time and again, if the state governments have to come to the high court and justify, okay, we have done the proof, we have done the justice in the right way, this particular case has been dealt in the most professional fashion, then all the high court have to do is ask, okay, let produce from FIR all the way till what has happened. So the entire criminal justice system will be under microscope, right? So at least then the SI will say, next time, sir, we cannot do this because last time the court has asked us. So let us do the things in the right way, or let us not do the thing in the first place. So such kind of criminal justice system reform might come into the picture. The most important thing for the country is to take the Malimat committee report. Yes, Malimat committee report can be linked with the 2021 smart policing, and criminal justice system reforms can be implemented. That is just one way to look at this particular thing. Next. So it's an ongoing issue. All of you know what is sedition, section 124. Today also in the newspapers, we have seen a group of farmers who have attacked a particular police van or something like that have been booked under sedition case. So sedition is a very big term, and sedition carries a lot of weight, and it is a very stringent section. So sedition cannot be used loosely, right? Sedition has to be used in the proper way. When sedition is thrown just like that, it is creating a chilling effect. So Supreme Court today, like after the paper has been published, asked, after 75 years of independence, why do we need to hang with the colonial era law? So government has to respond. So that article will probably come tomorrow. We will have a continuation, like one final goal, like there is sedition. What did government say? What did court say? What is the final judgment? Most probably courts will uphold the sedition law. Now, we have seen few cases where extremely rare diseases have been crowd-funded. One in Kerala recently, 18 crore, not 18 lakhs, 18 crore rupee medicine has been crowd-funded. Then within Hyderabad also, we have seen throughout India, we have seen 3 children whose lives are saved because of this crowdfunding. That too for 16 crores and 18 crores. In this context, various high courts have noticed that, not everybody can start crowdfunding. There are some frauds going on. So it is highly suggested that government itself starts something like a crowdfunding, so that there will be a legitimacy and funds will be more coming forth. Yes, again here we have to remember it's for rare disease. Not everybody can go there and start asking for donations and money. It should be a very extremely rare disease. And I hope you remember the cases where 16 crore rupee injection or some medicine has been provided to the kids. It's a gene editing kind of thing. So it's very, very costly. And government also have very nicely waived off the taxes, all the taxes on that kind of medicines to save these kind of children. So one good example for how judiciary and executive are coming together to protect the life of children in rare cases. Okay. Next, this is one more article where I wanted to discuss briefly, because even if you have the best intentions in the world, okay, none of us can see all the outcomes. This is totally a bona fide policy decision making, right? So we have limited seats in the bus. The policy is bounded by rationality. If probably if I was a secretary or someone, I would have framed a similar policy, and I wouldn't have anticipated that in the bus stops women will be harassed, or they will face sexual harassment or security threats, safety threats when the time is increasing, like from 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m. they are waiting for the buses. Okay, crime will increase, right? So this is perfect example for bona fide ignorance. I cannot see everything. So that is the beauty of policy making, right? Something has to be done, feedback has to be taken. So the best way is, okay, people have understood there is some kind of feedback, and I'm increasing the patrol, or I'm appointing, let's say, lady constable, or what we have Hyderabad, Disha, not Disha only, pink ambulance, pink patrols. Sorry, she teams. Yeah, exactly. So we have she teams. So such kind of things can be deployed, especially in the bus stops and all these things, right? So it's a good article. Remember it. When you have existing social fault lines, your policies cannot see them. I honestly was thinking, what else can someone come up with? We cannot increase the number of people in a particular bus, right? Or we can have staggered number of buses. Like for example, during 5 to 8 p.m. we need to have more buses rather than during the morning times. So shifts can be shifted towards a particular thing. Again, I feel all these things can come only with implementation of the policy. So please remember this example. As a policymaker, you will have some bounded rationality, even with all the foresight. Okay. Now, the organization within which they are working can provide feedback. Again, you are assuming they are working in Infosys, Tata, or something like that. Let's say they are garment workers. I mean, they work in a MSME, or they work in, let's say she is a sales girl. So if someone is working in Infosys, Cognizant, such thing, yes, the company has the onus to provide the bus. Okay, but if you are a sales girl or someone working in a mall, right? Again, you are just boosting your ego, right, Aditya? You don't want to accept that answer. Tell me, go out in your own town and talk to shopkeepers and ask them, will you give 25 rupees for auto for your worker? Okay, if 5 people say yes, tomorrow I will, in front of all these 19 people, I will say Aditya was right. Okay, now coming back to this particular single window for electric chargers. Okay, see, please don't live in bubbles. People don't even give a single rupee. You die, but you have to come to the work, or else I won't give you extra 100 rupees. We think from our mindset, everybody is a government employee. But if somebody is working in a mall or a shop, go and talk to them. Okay, the shopkeeper literally won't give you 20 extra rupees. Okay, you are talking about providing basic amenities. Yes. So what is the advantage and disadvantages of this particular policy? Now, as all of you know, electric vehicles or electric vehicle is a movement that is happening in the all over the country, not only in India, right? The most important thing is creating the ecosystem. Not everything should be done by the government. Okay, not everything is done by the government and should not be done by the government. What government should do is create that ecosystem where electric vehicle adaptation will increase. So in the similar lines, I don't know how many of you remember this. And in Tamil Nadu or Kerala, I think government has created a policy where kirana shops can have electric chargers, just like the yellow phone box we used to have. You drop a 1 rupee coin and people can take calls, right? Yes. So in the same way, a startup is creating an electric charger. It will be in front of every kirana store or whosoever, right? Because there are more EV chargers, I will not hesitate to buy a EV bike or a EV car. So we are creating the infrastructure where the biggest hurdle of EVs is lack of stations. Yes, not generating, that will be a different term. We are creating the charging points. We are creating more like, you know, the petrol bunks for electric vehicles. Now again, this is happening not with the government's push, this is happening with the private sector's push. Okay, so that is the most important thing. And they are creating a single window clearance for all these things. So startups plus government policies will lead to adaptation of electric vehicles. Yes, FAME 1 and FAME 2, that is exactly the policy, right? I need to create that ecosystem where, you know, people should not think twice to even think about electric vehicle chargers. And one more concept is battery swapping. You don't have to have a single battery, right? Just like a Stephanie, you can have battery swapping, and battery swapping has to be standardized. That means no matter which electric vehicle you buy, the battery is of standard size. So automatically I can go to the nearest point. I can just swap my battery with a new battery and everything goes smooth. So once we reduce the frictions for people to buy these electric vehicles, electric vehicle adaptation will increase. And also you have to remember, Delhi is the first state to have an electric vehicle policy, which reduces taxes. You don't have to pay high income, road tax and all these things on the electric vehicles. So yes, adaptation, yeah, kind of nudge and adaptation will increase. Now I was still thinking about, you know, domestic maids. How many of your families cut the money if the domestic maid don't show up for 3 days? Yes, talk to your parents, talk to your mom, talk to your aunties and uncles. Okay, how many of them are actually miserly, you know, for what? Not miserly, I mean, they have their own calculations and understandings, right? It's a way of telling them, if you don't come for 3 or 4 days, I will cut your salary. Yes, all the informal, more than 3 days your payment is cut, right? Yeah. Yes, I have paid my maid for 2 months without any, she didn't even enter my home. I'm not talking about COVID in generally. Okay, so again, I hope all of you understood, right? Informal sector is very, very what we call instable. You cannot predict, if she falls ill for malaria or something, she won't get the money, and you cannot say it's a wrong thing. Now coming back to electric vehicle policy and digitization. So Google is integrating the Delhi public transport with Google mobiles, Google apps, so you can have real-time data. Now what I wanted to talk about is, when we are nudging all these things, are we also nudging the rehabilitation of the existing people who are dependent on internal combustion engines? There are thousands of sales shops, right, mechanics, and people who are purely dependent on the existing models. Okay, while you are entertaining the renewable energies and electric vehicles, at the same time also have policies to slowly start moving the crowd from the existing things to electric vehicle departments. I'm not saying that we will increase unemployment, but the transition also has to be there. Not vehicles, that is one way to look at it, but again, vehicle scrapping policy has a whole different intention, right? What I'm trying to tell you is, people have to move away from this existing or uh, historical employments, mechanic. So we have a garage. Unless we move away or we upgrade and reskill and upskill our technology, a traditional mechanic may not survive forever. So this reskilling and upskilling should be encouraged through Pradhan Mantri Kausal Vikas Yojana, so that he will also know the existing things and he will be moving slowly towards the new things. Yes. So the transition also has to be focused, or else we will create a kind of problem for some people in their livelihoods. Okay. So yeah. So I hope all of you remember modern Indian history. When you have read this particular article, or when you have seen this particular article, I don't know whether it's in Hyderabad edition or not. 1 lakh signatures have been collected by Aam Aadmi Party. Again, we are not going into the politics, but when you read modern Indian history, if you remember Gandhiji's first satyagraha only, right? Is it satyagraha? I know where it happened. Okay, where is the first satyagraha? Kheda. Okay. Right. So if you remember Spectrum, or if you, Ahmedabad is first hunger strike. Very good, Vallabh. Highly appreciated. So the thing is, he collected the signatures of all the indigo farmers. I hope you remember that particular thing. And it took 10 years for the entire area to get rid of the indigo farming. In Lakshmikant, sorry, in the Spectrum or Bipin Chandra, it's one page. We turn the page and we feel, okay, everything has vanished from Kheda, and we celebrate Gandhi. But also remember, it took 10 years. Okay, so the Gandhian ways, may not be applicable for a 24/7 news channel generation. We need things fast, we need things quick, or else we will move from front page to 10th page and we will forget them. Okay, so if you have to face a question like, are Gandhian ways important in 21st century, or will Gandhian ways work in 2021 in India? You have to be very smart in how you write or how you bring the change. You have to take the Gandhian ways, the signature campaigns or campaigns, and how you are linking it to, let's say, social media storms, or the moral pressure that you create on the leadership. And it has to be drastic and it has to be very impactful, not again toolkits. Okay, that's one understanding. Okay, if you see the Kerala governor article also, he has done fasting. Okay, again, fasting is a disease that has been adapted to Indian leaders without any context, right? So Gandhian methods have their own advantages and disadvantages. When you take a Gandhian method, nobody can complain against you, but you need to have the patience and understanding. So Gandhian policies were widely seen during COVID. Example? Cleanliness. Okay. Yes. Okay. Minimum purchase. Swadeshi. You can also bring in Swadeshi or rural empowerment, like Atmanirbharta can be linked to Swadeshi, and going back to the traditional grassroots. Smart villages or self-reliant villages will make a self-reliant Bharat. So that is always the Gandhiji's dream, right? But also you have to recollect Ambedkar. Ambedkar calls villages as cesspools. So again, both are equally true. But I just wanted to link the Gandhian methods in 21st century to something you are seeing, because I haven't seen signature campaign by a political party in a long time. Okay. Right. So populist measures, we have seen this. One more article related to ethics. So this society as a determinant to ethics and morals. We have seen this, right? We have many determinants of morals. One of those most important morals are Indian ethos, especially when it comes to India, is we always take care of the elderly. India is special in international context just because of this particular thing, that we take care of our parents, grandparents. We don't stay away. And no, it's a popular comparison, right? In the USA, kids don't call their parents. In India, we call parents every day, or we talk to them, so on and so forth. In this particular context, so a 76-year-old widow, her son has cheated her, thrown out of her home. She was abused, assaulted. Sorry, she was assaulted. Then the Punjab High Court have said, it's your responsibility to take care of the parents. Now, two things here: whether it's a moral obligation, in the sense, not whether should it be only a moral obligation, or should there be a legal backing as well? Because in India, we also have seen something called as Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens and Act. And yes, we have an act for that. And Assam government has also introduced something called as cutting your salary. If you are a government employee and if you don't take care of your parents, we will reduce, or we will take away certain amount of money from your account. So both these are legal backings, right? Yes. Multiple coercive tactics. Now my only question is, with the time, circumstances and situations, morals of the society will change. Yes. So this has to be treated more like a crime rather than a moral issue. It's both crime and moral issue. So we can link it in every perspective possible. But the most important thing is, in a society that deeply respects its parents, how do you reinforce such values? The solution is more important, not what is happening in this particular case, or not what society is doing. Society is always bad, rotten, it has its own issues. Now, either it's because of property, poverty, or multiple reasons, we have slowly seen deteriorating in the values of the family, deterioration in the family values. So we have to bring some kind of societal reinforcement without coercive tactics. Law can be one determinant. Yes, if you bring a strong, stringent law, it will make sure that people follow in the line. But I'm asking you to think of a societal reinforcement without being coercive. Bringing Indian ethos through Ramayana like stories. All of us know Ramayana, right? Again, I'm saying reinforce. You have to be you have to reinforce. Entertainment channels can be used to inculcate them. So general perception is, if you take care of your parents, automatically the society have this kind of positive opinion towards you. You can have this family get-togethers, right? Our extended family get-togethers, just to reinforce the value in the next generation of the children or the next generation of families. Is no matter how much the technology changes, our values change, at the end of the day we are all family. And especially during the COVID times, we have realized the importance of that particular thing, right? See, again, giant families are never going to work in 21st century because we have scattered so far. But the thing is, occasional reinforcement by society, or you can make it a norm, right? Like if you have these family gatherings, festivals, and all these things, society in the eyes of the society, that reinforces. That is something we can learn from Marwari communities, right? They are very closely knit communities. So I mean, I'm just giving you a question. I'm not saying this is the only solution. My only interest is, can we link this to having less? Okay. How does that solve the problem, Manogna? Love will be
Excuse me.
consolidated.
Like maybe
Yes.
lesser number of kids will have, they'll have more financial stability so that they won't feel parents as a burden.
Okay.
They can all live together. Like the first criteria here is, once basically anybody starts having kids, they concentrate more on the kids rather than their parents. So
Okay. See, I mean, the quality of life of the children will increase so that they can take care of the parents, is her argument. So that's one way to look at the things. Okay. So again, as I told, my only intention is in the home for grandchildren and grandparents by government. So you are officially encouraging and entertaining through through grandparents out of the homes. Okay. Right. So one more article. I don't know how many of these articles are there in Hyderabad edition. Parents Day in Japanese school, where children are made to understand the value of parenting. Yes, see, education is always a very powerful tool. Again, reducing everything to Parents Day, Grandparents Day. Fine. At least in the school level, you will have that kind of moral thing. Now, there is a very interesting article linking CSR funds to empowering the women entrepreneurs. Now, it's not some unique hatke or mind-blowing idea, but the very interesting idea here is, we have to remember the migration scale. From village, you will move to tier 1 cities, and then to tier 2 cities, and then finally you land up in urban areas. So sometimes you directly bypass from village to urban areas. Now, as per economic survey 2016-17, I don't remember the year, as per one economic survey and common sense, we can assume this: if these women entrepreneurs are created in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, okay, it will stop the migration in this fashion, right? A rapid urbanization won't happen, but these entrepreneurs will go to tier 1 and tier 2 cities, and they will employ people. Yes, self-help groups, cost of living, and all these things are much cheaper, much you have access to land, you have access to resources. All these things are clearly available in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, what we call as census towns, or developing cities. So if corporate social responsibility and empowerment of women is happening in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, we have multiple solutions. One is, we are making those women very empowered. Second thing, sometimes the tier 1 to the tier 1 cities and the villages are very in close proximity, so they can come in the morning and they can go back in the evening, right? So they don't have to leave their homes, so burden won't be there on the tier 1 cities. If the distance is a problem, tier 1 cities will also start developing, right? And link it with e-commerce. So the rule that you have to only go to Delhi for UPSC preparation is no longer applicable, because internet is a great equalizer. You can learn the same things from any place in the country. In the same way, if you are producing something in a tier 1, if you have a unique product, e-commerce will give you wings and you can conquer the world. Right? In that way, I think the synergies have to be created. More tier 1 and tier 2 focus will solve problems of rapid urbanization, burden on the cities, development of all areas equally, intra-regional development issues can be solved, women empowerment will happen, and something we call as urban, rural area will also have spillover effects. Right? So I think it's a very nice idea, but you have to expand it in the right fashion. that can be linked to develop online education for student aid. See, again, totally two different things, right? You are creating entrepreneurial forces. See, all these women will be skilled in something. They can come together and form something called as self-help groups or MSME. She can take a loan under Mudra scheme and start employing more people. She might be a provider, right? So what you're talking is more about digital inequality. Yes. Can we say directly selling industries in step in such direction? Directly selling industry. See, again, skill development to the industry level doesn't happen overnight, right? You may have lack of economies of scale and all these things, but by empowering these women, let's say you're creating a self-help group, they will be skilled. I mean, they will employ people, right? They are owners, plus they will work and they will also employ other women. So what will happen is you are having more human capital. The best among these people will move into industries, a better paying job. So these tier 1 and tier 2 cities can be like, training institutes. They will grow, they will create human capital, better people among them will move to industries, whereas new people will always be hired by these tier 1 and tier 2 cities. So this is one way to, kill multiple issues in one go. Yes. Reskilling, upskilling, skilling in the first place. Stand Up India, yeah, you can link it to spirit of Stand Up India. I hope you got the idea, like what I'm trying to tell. The advantage I see with this is when someone from village comes and gets skilled, okay, she can move on to this, okay, but there will always be someone who will be willing to come here because she doesn't want to move beyond this particular point because of socio-cultural economic reasons. Let's say she is very skilled, but she doesn't want to go to a big city because her husband or in-laws won't allow her. But if she's going to the nearby town and coming back, okay, she doesn't have to move anywhere. Still, she is empowering herself. A lot of advantages are there in this particular model also. So human capital creation is happening, which can be hired in industries. So it's like layer by layer growth. Okay. So now, as I have already mentioned, this article has been covered briefly. So you don't have to make everything draconian. Not everything is problematic. But one thing has to be understood. All the laws, acts, judgments in the world cannot change the mindset of a patriarchal family. So here the problem is more about social evil, the society's mindset, not every family again. There are some families who are very adamant. Why sudden urge? So again, there is something called as election in 2022. Okay. Now, here what we need to learn from this particular article, as all of you know, the proportionality. Yes, the 4 points that are given in the proportionality judgment in Puttaswamy case. I feel there is a kind of lobbying that is going against the entire thing. There are issues, but as a society also we can focus on better issues, because as I said, when already things are working towards 2.1, there is no point in crying over everything done by particular state. So if you have any specific line that you didn't understand or specific topic you didn't understand, please let me know. Again, how many people will actually stand for Panchayati elections? A very limited section, right? That too has been validated by Supreme Court. A very few section of the population is in government jobs. So it's more about smoke screens, right? It appears like the government is doing something, and as I always say, democracy learns from itself. The most important thing is the more you raise the bogey of population, the more facts will come out into the market. that's a good thing. More and more people will come to understand that, suddenly there is a focus on population. It's for their own benefit that they should have less number of kids. And again, that cannot come from top to bottom approach, right? It has to work in the grassroots level. People are seeing in their own lifetimes that if they have 3, 4, 5 kids, their standard of living is falling down. All those people who are having only one child or two child, they are doing pretty decently. Yes, and even the girl child, she is getting more educated. If you remember Indian Express article which says more adolescent girls having enrolled in BCom courses or graduation courses than boys, tells that all this human capital, wonderful human capital, is going to come into the market. They are going to earn livelihood, and they are going to contribute to the society. And worst case scenario, bad karma or whatever, if they are getting married, at least the next generations, they have a educated mother. Again, it's a very bad example, but that is unfortunate reality also. So educated woman who knows what is patriarchy and how her dreams are being killed by the society, she will be raising better generation, right? So these are all the things we have to remember. The best way is more data. There are districts in the country which needs actual focus on the population policy. We need to identify them. The problem is backwardness. As S.Y. Qureshi rightly concludes, development is the best contraceptive. There is no better thing. You cannot change the people. Once you show development, automatically people will have less and less amount of kids. And that's the most important thing to remember. Okay, so right. So I have written so many lines here while I was reading this article. Now, so Mr. Hamid Dabolkar. So you have to know who he is. So he's a psychiatrist and a member of rationalist movement in the country. Okay. Now, first prelims question: which school of philosophy is talking only about rationality? Ancient Indian history textbook. There are 6 schools of philosophies. All of them. Sankhya? Does Sankhya, hello? Yeah, does Sankhya talk about rationality, God? Okay, fine. Your exam, your attempt. Now, coming back to the core discussion of this particular article, he's calling astrology as a pseudoscience. Now, the first problem starts with faith. If I take 10 people, I can prove 5 people who actually believe that, astrology has worked in my life. Then there are other 5 people who say it may or may not work. Okay. So 3 are like skeptical, 2 are like 100% doesn't work. Now, how do you compete with the other 5? Because just like religion and other things, some things go by faith. I understand his understanding. I understand why he's talking about rationality in this particular context. But the most important thing is faith is a very difficult subject to prove otherwise. Okay, his rational points like calling sun as a planet or Rahu Ketu as a planet may be taken in the 21st century prism, totally accepted. But if you go and talk to an astrologer, he will give his own logic. Yes, and you may or may not accept this, but 9 out of 10 marriages in India go by astrology, right? Irrespective of religion. I have seen people from Muslim communities and other communities also coming to Hindu priests, giving the kundali of their daughter or son and asking, does this work out? Okay, so that is the first criteria in almost majority of the Hindu communities, whether the kundali matches or not. If yes, then only they will proceed. Now, you are asking to take away the time pass of majority of the parents. Okay, at least parents with a marriage daughter or a son. So that's their whole life revolves around these things for 1 year. So we cannot insult them by saying, there is no faith. So please be very careful in understanding this article. He is correct, and there is no proof for me to say he is correct. The opposite is equally true. If someone says I have shown an astrologer, he has suggested me and it worked out for me, all the signs in the world cannot prove me wrong that that happened by luck. Okay, just like we cannot prove karma theory in rational sense. Sometimes it works, sometimes it waits. So when it waits, I cannot say there is no karma theory. It will come back and bite me. At the same time, maybe there is no universal force. We are all just some lucky genes. You can take 10,000 stands on this particular article, but be very clear, when you talk about faith to a common person, he has his own understanding, and we are very beautiful as a race. We live in contradictions. We can send a satellite or a human being to Mars, and at the same time, just before that, we can go to Navagraha temple and pray for the welfare of that particular satellite. We can do both, as long as it doesn't become a business, as long as it doesn't become a exploitative industry. If people are having faith, let them have faith, but you should definitely come down very heavily on people who are doing mischievous activities like fake babas or something like this. Yes, crimes under the name of fake babas. Again, you have to have a very crystal clear clarity. No, so that's my interpretation of this particular article. So, and again, religion is the opium of the masses. You need to have that understanding, that maturity. Once you reach that particular level where you are an atheist, or where you feel like all these things are total crap, I don't need any of these things, and you live happily, that is fine. I totally get that. But for the masses, we also need to slowly nudge them. There is a thin line in dogmatism and faith. See, his context is also different, right? Gopinath's context is also different. I am not blindly emulating. See, especially when it comes to astrology, state's support may not be needed there, because as a society, we have a deeply ingrained affection towards that. Second thing, when we are focusing on astrology in IGNOU, we never stopped funding ISRO. ISRO is one of the most successful institutions in the country. That is what I said, right? We are a race which can send people to Mars, and the same race who kills their own daughters in the name of superstitions. I hope you remember that COVID case in Andhra, where a respected couple, professor couple or someone, killed both of their daughters or something like that. Okay, so be very crystal clear in understanding this article. Faith, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone, is fine. When you keep it within the four walls, it's fine. But when it becomes dogmatism, like blind faith, when you start hurting your own family members and hurting yourself, that is not entertained, right? Again, it has a longer advantage of putting fear in the people, like morals. Okay, if religion brings morality to the society, I'm totally happy to accept that kind of morality, as long as people do things in the right direction. But the slippery slope is politicization, vote bank politics, superstitions, dogmatism. This has to be fought again. What are we even discussing? We are discussing a country which banks plates with utensils to run to drive away COVID. Okay, so we are not even qualified to criticize such kind of belief and faith. Okay, have any of your relatives came back and say, we broke the chain for one day and still we couldn't make it? Okay, now again, so you may not totally take my line. I will tell you a simple example. That is why I have written this coin toss. When you want to take a decision, sometimes funnily you take a coin toss, right? When you flip the coin, when the coin is in the air, okay, whatever you want it to land is actual thing that you needed, heads or tails. Okay, you're not actually depending on the heads or tails, but when the coin is in the air, that is when you know your true core decision, like this is what I wanted. Okay, so probably astrology, when you go to an astrologer or someone, you know, there might be a nudge. There might be a nudge to you to take the right decision. There is no harm in taking the right decision. Okay, if you are breaking few coconuts and spending some 1,000 rupees and believe in a positive story and might have hope in the life. Okay, 6 months down the line, I might get a job. I might clear UPSC. I might also write an article like that. Mithali said. Okay, so if you have that hope just because of an astrology, there is no harm, right? And at the same time, I don't know whether it's faith that actually worked for you. So it's a very tricky area. So having rational mind is always a good thing. And I encourage scientific temper. Clear? Any other points that you want to make in this particular article? Law of attraction, power of subconscious mind. We cannot prove all these things. I think Sharath was the one who was making this comment, right? Like long time ago, he made this statement saying Elon Musk is a very rational Elon Musk and something like that. I made a statement saying if he had come to India or if he was born in India, probably he would not have been so lucky, right? So was it what? Whose power of attraction was there for him to go to USA? Did SpaceX attract him, or as Harry Potter says, the van chooses the magician, right? It's not the other way around. So it's very hard to prove all these things. Why complicate our life with such questions? Any other questions on this particular article? You can totally contradict. Okay, you can say, sir, I 100% believe in that and I will support you. I know a student within this particular class whose family is very close to this astrology department, so I don't want to offend any feelings, but still the thing is, it may work for some people, it may not work for some people. But why to make it a mainstream curriculum? Again, there are colleges, astrology colleges, which are running throughout the country, right? If you don't like it, don't take it. That can be one thing. If you are already liking it, people are joining those colleges, people are taking those courses, people have MA in astrology. So it's not something new. We are probably just making something which is already very prevailing and taking into something. The simple argument is Indian ethos. Again, that is where the point, right? If the minister comes and say, why do you think it's a pseudoscience? You have only 50-50 chances of proving him wrong. He also have 50-50 chances of convincing you. It's like impossible, unstoppable force meets the immovable object. So this is where I think Einstein's quote comes in very beautifully. Explain me Big Bang, and I can explain to you everything else. Right? So, and lastly, coming to the article of awards, there is no much value or value addition from this particular article. One important thing is preach what you do. Leadership should always do what it is preaching. If Kejriwal is so worried about doctors and police officers, his government should first give the compensation that has been already announced by his own government. So when somebody sacrifices their life for the country, the least we can do is monetary compensation for his or her family, and that will take care of the family. Knowing that my family will be taken care, people will always be choosing the public service and doing it with more honesty. That is just one line of thought. Last article of the day, Supreme Court to study court's role in policy crisis. So this article is about various high courts intervening in the job of the executive. So if you remember, there was an editorial in, not editorial, there was an article in Indian Express which argued that Supreme Court is, crossing its limits. Supreme Court is breaking the separation of powers doctrine and dictating what to do, what not to do. Now, that's a very interesting article. So I said power abhors vacuum. When nobody was doing their job, somebody has to intervene, and that someone was Supreme Court. Now, the solution to this long-term crisis is democracy learns from its own mistakes. So are we having standard operating procedure? See, SOP can be two things, right? One is separation of powers. The other is standard operating procedure. Whenever there is a pandemic or whenever there is a criteria, okay, Supreme Court need not intervene as long as you have a following standard operating procedure. And we can bring the best epidemiologists, doctors, right? Or lot many experts from 10 departments can come together. They can create a standard operating procedure from our present situations. And as long as we have the standard operating procedures, all the Supreme Courts in the world cannot come and tell the government what to do, because that SOP has been established by the best of the experts. If you are not implementing the SOP in the best way possible, then allowing the judiciary to enter into executive may be fine. But if judiciary is so sensitive about separation of powers, it should rectify its own house. Yes, the first and most important thing is World Health Organization have standards. You need to have this many number of doctors, nurses, beds. Okay, if you establish that priorly or work at least in that particular direction from now onwards, next time if there is a pandemic, judiciary won't have a role because government has taken all the proactive steps. So this is more about governance rather than separation of powers. Okay, in spite of having a world-class standard operating procedure, then if Supreme Court intervenes, then we will be the first class or first batch in the country to criticize the Supreme Court for going the extra mile where it was not needed. So the lesson for democracy here is standard operating procedures. You can argue by saying, COVID is a once in a decade or once in a century pandemic. How can we have standard operating procedure? Now that we have seen a once in a century pandemic, okay, it's easy to create SOP for the rest of the things, right? So never let a good crisis go waste. Executive can take this as an opportunity and create SOPs in every direction possible, whether it's media, whether it's reporting in the media, whether it's importing of vaccination, giving exemption to the taxes, or importing of vaccination, or establishing genome sequencing, everything, like literally from starting to end, agriculture to space. Create SOPs for each and everything, not only for pandemic. Then Supreme Court need not enter into this particular executive area. Shield yourself and nobody can blame you. The 2015 MARS, right? It helped South Korea in establishing SOP for COVID. So if you take COVID as a SOP protocol, I don't think you will miss much. We have seen all the things we are supposed to see. We can from crematoriums all the way till pricing of vaccines, black marketing of vaccines, everything we have seen. So why not create SOP? Why not create technological changes that are needed now? I think that will be the most important long-term solution, right? Then court's role will automatically come down. Migrants, we can think about migrants. Next time we have to introduce lockdown, first make sure that migrants are transported, okay, or at least they have food protection here, or there is a rural database, migrant database. Establish the migrant database, then next time Supreme Court won't come and scold you where is the migrant database. Next time you want to announce a demonetization, make sure the old notes and new notes are the same size so that ATMs won't be held up. That's a lesson learned from demonetization. SOP, right? So that is how democracies get better every time. Clear? Okay. Okay, then I will end the session here. By the way, Aditya, don't go outside. Please wear mask. Stay safe. It's only a discussion. You need not take it very personally. People, sir, in the recent article on One Have Doubt, when there is a question on astrology, where I always wanted to know how the conclusion that there are 9 planets and moons without traveling. Okay. So you're asking that, you know, a good astrologer, how come an astrologer is not making money? So that's one kind of, like, that's the question, right? So the simplest argument I have heard about, you know, astrologers not having money is, you know, I will tell it in Telugu. It's Saraswati Putrulaku Lakshmi Kataksham undadu. In the sense, those who are blessed by goddess Saraswati won't have the blessings of Lakshmi. Those who have the blessings of Lakshmi won't have the blessings of Saraswati. So both of both of them cannot go hand in hand is the most simplest argument I have seen. And if you go to, you know, astrologers, I think nowadays they are they're making good amount of money. They are selling so many things from yantras, missions. Okay. I wanted to know, should we find the rationality behind? Definitely, you should find the rationality behind astrology. See, again, my understanding of Indian ethos is this: we always had a rational thought behind everything, but when they were created some thousands of years ago and how it has transpired over a thousands of years are two different things. The original intention or the idea might be in a whole different level. There is a wonderful video by Sanskrit channel. I don't know if you follow it on YouTube. There is a channel called as the Sanskrit channel. That guy actually explains to you how a Kundali is created, what is the logic behind Kundali, and how it is being interpreted in the 21st century. So just go and watch that video, Sanskrit channel. And recently I think he has uploaded this video. Okay, my appreciation for ancient Indians is always very high because they are the people who have done meditation. They have lived a very frugal life, and they created only things with curiosity, right? They identified what is the distance between earth and sun just by, you know, mental calculations. They were wonderful people because they were rational. They had curiosity of mind. Takshashila, Nalanda, all these things thrived not because of, you know, cultures, temples. They thrived because of maths, science, and that rational thinking. Later came the so-called culture. So if you are really interested in Indian ethos, focus on the rational thought of the Indians. Just read all the Western philosophy and read the Upanishads. You won't find a parallel of Upanishads in anywhere in the Western thought. Okay, so, you know, that is the standard. I hope that explains to you. The application may not be the same. Okay, yoga has become a business. Yoga has become a business. That was not what Patanjali has intended, right? Patanjali intended yoga to be very flexible. I mean, for you to be flexible so you can meditate and get moksha. Now yoga is more of a medical term, or you do yoga only when you have a disease. That was not, yoga was a lifestyle. So theory and practice. Hindustan times. I don't think it's too late. I will see that article and I will get back to you, Rishi. Okay, then. See you all tomorrow, same time.